Today's video does contain some disturbing subject matter and viewer discretion is advised. I also wanted to pop in here and say that this is my third Remade stories video, so you may have heard these stories if you've been around for a long time, but I'm going to let you know that it's been a very long time. So, they're probably new to a lot of you. Anyways, I hope you enjoy. I just moved to Northern Virginia from Central Texas a few months ago, and it's still taking some time to get acclimated. My girlfriend and I moved up after graduation. She's currently enrolled in grad school while I'm trying to find the right job for myself. She's currently in an opera concert at her university, and 1 or 2 days a week I'm left to my own devices from 11 a.m. to midnight, as she has daytime classes, afternoon work, and night rehearsal all stacked up in a row. On one such day, I decided I would surprise her with some cookies when she got home. It was around 11 p.m., so I figured it would be the perfect time to go get a pack of those Nestle chocolate chip pre-made cookie cubes. Being a denizen of Texas, I'm used to shopping at H-E-B late at night. A relatively tame shopping experience, with little to no dangers other than the occasional person asking if you can spare some gas money. I had heard rumors of late-night Walmart and all the eldritch terrors that lurked within, but being a relatively cautious young dude, I figured I would be alright. The demographics in the store were pretty typical for what I've seen in the day. Older folks pedaling around alone, Latino families, macho tattooed dudes, a gaggle or two of undergrad kids, and then I got to the nut aisle. I excused myself as I walked past an older dude in a green windbreaker and khaki shorts, and began to peruse the selection of nut mixes for a light snack while the cookies would be baking. That was when I noticed this erratic movement out of the corner of my eye. I'm not an idiot, so if I notice something fishy or dangerous, I try not to make it obvious that I have noticed it. I guess I think there's some sort of strength in keeping that information to myself until the time is right. The movement in question was emanating from a single dude coming down the aisle. He was around 5'4" and wearing a burgundy tracksuit. He was white, possibly a little Asian mixed in, and he wore a black cap over what looked like greasy hair that had been bleached blonde. Now, I haven't really described the way he was moving, because I don't really know the word for it. It's almost like he was dancing, but not like he wanted to. Looking back, I'm almost certain the dude was tweaking, and the jitters that came with it were rocking through his entire gait. The dude could simply not be still. He was looking at products and then immediately turning on his heels to continue down the aisle, rinse, repeat. It was so odd. He got closer and closer to me, and immediately I tensed up and prepared myself for him to talk to me. To my surprise, he did not. I breathed out a sigh of relief, and my amigo in the shorts, whom we'll call Shorts Man, left the aisle and began to walk towards the self-checkout. Burgundy Dude then followed. Oh, okay. That's probably his son or something, and he might just have some kind of developmental issues. No big deal, I thought to myself, and yet curiosity got the better reason, as it always does. I decided to peek to see if I could at least get a sample of their family dynamic as they walked through the store. Here's where it gets almost comical. Okay, so Shorts Man was just making a beeline for the registers. He was done shopping. He just wanted to check out, obviously. Yet, Burgundy Dude, in all his jittering glory, continued to check product and walk and check products and walk. But he wasn't doing it in the same beeline. He was bouncing from location to location. He would check an end cap on aisle 14, walk across the racetrack to look at a row of dress shirts in a soft line rack, then move to the end of aisle 12, so on and so forth. But he was still going about the same path that Shorts Man was. Holy crap. He wasn't with Shorts Man. He was following Shorts Man. And he was trying to look inconspicuous while doing it. This actual idiot thought that he was being sneaky, in a deep red tracksuit, bouncing around the store like a locomotive and trying to blend into the environment like he was a character in Assassin's Creed or L.A. Noire or something. I was dumbfounded. As if to ensure that my evaluation of the situation was correct, Shorts Man, perhaps having noticed Burgundy Dude already, doubled back a few aisles into the baking goods. And, wouldn't you know it, Burgundy Man forgot that he needed to check the nutritional facts on that 20-ounce bag of chocolate chips for approximately 2.5 seconds in that aisle, also. It was at that point, after Shorts Man and his crimson tail had rounded the corner to the registers, that I lost them for the time being. I went ahead and paid for my stuff and began to head to my car. Now, when I was inside the store, the idea of Burgundy Dude was funny. Hilarious, even. I was surrounded by other people, and there was this bumbling, possibly drugged-out buffoon with Secret Agent Man by Johnny Rivers playing on repeat in his head. But when I was outside in the parking lot, it suddenly became a lot more distressing. There wasn't witnesses everywhere. My field of vision wasn't open everywhere I turned. I couldn't see around every car or in every truck bed. I didn't know where this dude was. I had seen what pattern he was following inside the store, but had no idea what the same compulsion would bring him to do outside. And I was scared. Then, I saw him. He was walking amongst the cars up a driving lane, towards the store. I also spotted my car directly in his path. Well, great. After grabbing both bags into a single hand, I reached for my keys. I didn't have a pocket knife on me, and the closest alternative that I have to a weapon is a wrench that I keep in my car's glove box. I slipped my ring finger into my keys and tried to nonchalantly fit the keys through my fingers in case of a confrontation. I picked up my pace a bit, and he was approaching fast, but I tried to be faster. He wasn't approaching me directly, not that I could tell. I just knew the dude was bad news and I didn't want anything to do with him. Panic began to rise in my chest, and I fumbled the car's key fob into my thumb and unlocked the doors as fast as I could, before reverting the fob back into my makeshift knuckle duster. That was when a Jeep roared around the corner and made a full stop just beside Burgundy Dude. It was my friend, my hero, my theoretical savior, Shorts Man. His window was rolled down, and in a concise phrase, the dude looked pissed. He spoke to Burgundy Dude, not in a yell, but in an assertive, raised voice like a gym teacher having a bad day. "Do we have a problem? Do we have an effing problem? What's the deal here? You think that's cute? Can I help you with something?" Burgundy Dude reacted in a flash. He pulled the brim of his cap down low over his eyes and broke out into a sprint deep into the rows and rows of cars, away from me and Shorts Man. I lost him a few rows away, but I didn't see him leave the parking lot. Shorts Man then turned his attention to me. "Did he mess with you too?" I couldn't speak for a second, but then finally mustered a, "No." Feckless piece of crap. This happened a few weeks ago, and I'm ad-libbing the other dialogue, but I remember that phrase distinctly. He looked over the rows of cars Burgundy Dude had fled into and said it as if he was spitting out phlegm. Then he drove away. Then I got in my car and I did as well. I don't know what happened past him tailing Shortsman. I don't know if he was trying to pickpocket him. I don't know if he was trying to steal his groceries. I don't know if they had confronted one another before Shortsman pulled up on him. And I don't know if Burgundy Dude was going to target me next. All I know is that I am not going back to Walmart alone for a good while. The cookies were good, though. My mom and I were standing in line to check out at Walmart the other day. This guy who's average height, wearing a hoodie and a beanie, got in line behind us. He was standing really close to us, and I immediately got weird vibes. Since he only had one item and we had more, my mom said, "Would you like to go in front of us?" He responded with, "Nope, I'm not impatient about anything. I spent 27 years in prison for a crime I didn't commit." My mom said something like, "Wow, that's a long time." He then said, "Haven't you ever heard of the Donald Whalen story? That's me. If you live around here, in Bloomington, Illinois, I'm surprised you haven't heard about it. It was on the news, online, and there's a video of them releasing me on YouTube. You should look it up." He then proceeded to tell us about how his father was murdered, and that they charged him with it because his fingerprints were on the pool cue that was used to strike his dad. He said that his fingerprints were on it because he played pool there earlier that day. They released him from prison because of someone else's DNA. He said that this was the first big store he'd been to since he got out. He also said that his lawyer bought him a Harley, which I thought was a little strange. We looked up Donald Whalen, and the picture was, in fact, who we met. And he was in prison for 27 years. We talked to my dad about it that night, and all he said was, with a straight face, "Donnie Whalen? The guy that murdered his dad? I used to work in the bar that this happened at. That's why you don't talk to people in Walmart." He said it so matter-of-factly that it gave me chills. My dad explained that Donald Whalen was a drug addict, and that he murdered his dad at his work to rob him and get money to buy drugs. Apparently, a lot of people still believe that Donald Whalen is guilty of murdering his dad, and I myself have suspicions as well. If you're curious about learning more about this guy, you can look up Donald Whalen, and he should be the first thing that pops up. If you want to see pictures of him, you can look up his name on Google Images. The OP then left 2 edits. Edit, May of 2020. I just found out that Donald Whalen got arrested again for failing to comply with a device. Probably an ankle monitor or something. Second edit, June of 2020. Donald Whalen got out of jail on bond, but he soon proved that he still needs to be behind bars. He was arrested again for stalking and unlawful restraint of his ex-girlfriend. I have a feeling that he will be locked up for a very long time. My mom and I were just talking about it, and there's little to no doubt in our minds that the man we spoke to that day actually murdered his dad. I could not shake the gut feeling that I had the day that we met him, and his recent arrest only adds to my suspicion about him. I was playing Pokemon Go a few days ago at the plaza at 2 a.m. because it was New Year's Eve. Everything was pretty normal, and I thought that it was safe. I was just tracking down one Pokemon that led me to a dark street when a guy walks past me. I gripped my phone a little harder just in case he might snatch it. He walked past me one more time before disappearing. 20 minutes later, I'm sitting on a plaza bench when I felt someone staring at me, an ability I've developed by being exposed to provoking gangs by accident. My first instinct was to, again, grip my phone a little harder. Surprise, the same guy sitting ways across from me, staring. I pretend to look contented with what I found there and left. Another hour later, walking around the plaza still, when I heard extra footsteps behind me. It's the same guy. At this point, I was having a bad feeling about it, so I put my phone in my jacket's pocket with my right arm staying in it, and put my left elbow halfway up in his direction, making it look like I'm holding an invisible knife against my chin, 180 degrees from his direction. I then put on the coldest stare at him that I can remember. The only way to describe the face I made to him was, "Do you want to die?" And he bailed. Potential answers to possible questions. 1. I play Arnis as a hobby. 2. My phone dies after 4 to 6 hours of use. And 3. Yes, I get attacked by gangsters regularly because of my more irregular eye shape than the locals. Regardless, it was pretty creepy that I, a male of age 17, can be a target of stalkers who are also males. But with proper self-defense training, we can literally intimidate them with just small actions and tell them to go mess with smaller fish. My friend and I, who I'll just call S, needed to get some things at our local Walmart. To give a little more detail, both my friend and I are females and in our 20s. I'm a little taller than her. I'm 5'3" and her being maybe 5'1". Now, I hate going to stores at night, especially without my husband, but he's currently deployed and her husband works nights. So, we decided to go by ourselves. It was around 5 p.m. and it's getting dark fast where we live. We walk in and make our way to one side of the store where all the home appliances are. I felt like I was being stared down, so I turn around to see a tall, slender man in a hat, heavy coat, and glasses. Note that it's 70 degrees where I live right now. He looked to be in his late 30s, early 40s. I moved behind my friend because I thought maybe I was in his way, and he looked like he was in a hurry to be somewhere. He doesn't pass, and I still felt his eyes on me. I turn around again and look directly at him, hoping that he'd get that I know that he's staring. He turns and bolts the other way, so I start to think, okay, maybe he got the hint. We go get what we need on that side of the store. As we're down one of the aisles, I look over to see the same man looking down every single aisle. He stops and looks at us for a second, and then continues to walk. I should also note that this dude didn't have a cart or anything in his hands. I say something to my friend, but we both just shrug it off. I mean, he could be looking for someone that he came in with, right? We needed something on the other side of the store, in the food section, and we make our way over, cutting through the clothing area, women's clothing to be exact. I look over and notice that he's a couple of aisles away, and he keeps glancing over at us. He looks like he's trying to keep up with our pace. I told her, and we cut towards the baby section to lose him. We walk towards the food aisles, and I notice him pacing around over there. I grab her arm and we head to the electronics since there are workers there. I see a female worker and tell her, "Hey, I may be being paranoid, but I think there's a man following us." I gave her a description. She tells us to go act like we're going to print off some pictures off our phone. We go sit at the station while she calls for security. A female security officer comes over and we give his description again. As we're doing so, I notice that he is walking back to the electronics section. I point over to him, but I try not to make it obvious. He saw us talking to the officer and turns the other way towards the front of the store. The officer gets the second officer, a male, to go track him down. She walks us over to the food section to get what we need, and I'm shaking at this point. We see the male officer, and he said that he saw the man bolt out of the store really fast. We check out, and they both walk us to our car. Now, I've read a lot about this stuff online, and I'm already a very paranoid person when I go places, but I never thought that it would actually happen. I don't know what the dude's intentions were, but I know that trafficking is a big problem everywhere. I did not get a good feeling from this. The whole situation still makes me sick to think about it. My thoughts on it are, he was looking for females who were by themselves to try and creep on. He could have very well followed us to our car if we wouldn't have reported it. There's no telling how bad the situation could have gotten. We thanked the officers for everything and take the long way to her house and stop to get food to make sure that he wasn't following us. Luckily, he wasn't. So, creepy guy at Walmart, let's not meet again. I, 23, female, used to work in a supermarket at the deli counter. One Sunday afternoon, I was working, and this man, probably in his 30s, comes up to the counter and says to me, "Can you help me find something?" And I responded in my customer service voice, "Sorry, I can't leave the counter, but I'm sure one of my colleagues restocking the shelves could assist you." This was semi-true. I was meant to stay on my counter, but obviously I would have been allowed to assist this customer. In all honesty, I just couldn't be bothered. And other employees know the shop floor better than I do, because I do specifically work at the counters. So it just made sense to me. After saying that, he insists that I help him, and I explain about not knowing the shop floor very well so that I might not be the best to help. But alas, he continued to insist that I help him, prompting me to give my colleague a "what do I do" look, and she gives the okay via shrug, and I agree to help him. Anyway, I asked him what he needed help with, and we veer down the cleaning aisle, and he says that he wants to find dish soap. So, I find it for him and show him the selection of other dish soaps, and ask if I can help with anything else. He says that he needed a very specific type of dish soap, but was being very vague, and wouldn't give any details about the soap apart from it's in a plain packaging, which most of them are. We go back and forth because I don't really understand what's wrong with the other soaps, and he keeps on saying that they're the wrong ones. It gets kind of uncomfortable, but I didn't feel like I was in danger, so it was just sort of funny. So, I show him the hand soaps and ask him if that's closer to what he wanted, and he's saying that that's still not it. There were a few moments where he touched my arm when we were laughing at the awkwardness, trying to figure out his soap conundrum. But every time he did it, I just sort of backed away. But he'd continue to do it, and so naturally, that's when I started to get creeped out. So I'm still looking confused as hell, and ask him, "Well, what do you use the soap for?" He pauses, and looks into my eyes and nonchalantly says, "For my knives and dildos." Like, bro, what? So I pause in shock and say, "I'm sorry?" He then repeats, "For my knives and dildos." So I say something to the lines of, "I can't help you any further. I hope that you find your soap." I can see him semi-panic, but not in a way like he's concerned about me feeling uncomfortable, more like he's concerned about me leaving and the conversation ending. And then he pulls out this empty, crumpled dish soap from somewhere on him and says that this is the soap that he's looking for. I take one glance at it, and it's a home brand soap from a different supermarket. So I just tell him he's at the wrong shop and went back to the counter to tell my colleague. I was quite scared and felt threatened because why specifically knives and dildos? Especially after he's been invading my personal space and insisted that I was the person to help him. So I just took myself to the manager's office and told her what happened. Later on, she told me that security didn't see the man in the shop anymore, so he must have left, and offered to get someone to walk me back to my car when my shift ended, if I was shaken up by it. Luckily, that was the end of it, and I never saw him again. Four years ago, I was a 22-year-old female in Denmark, living in a small apartment with my own entrance, that is, no stairway. The building was 2 stories high, 2 apartments, and 4 apartments in length. That's 8 apartments in total, which all had their own entrance. I often noticed my upstairs neighbors coming and going because of the stairs to their terrace, and the entrance was right outside my window. 6 months prior to this event that I'm about to tell, this most horrendous guy, mid-30s, moved into the building opposite mine, with his poor, non-trained Stafford Bull Terrier. He blighted all of his surroundings with his violent outbursts, his drug selling, and his ever-loose biting dog. His dog did at one point bite mine totally unprovoked, so I was, to say the least, very afraid of this guy. Neither the housing association nor the police would do anything, though numerous complaints were filed. One Thursday night, around 11 p.m., I was heading to bed when I heard a mild turmoil. It sounded like people arguing. Like I said, 6 months prior, that one guy moved in, so this was nothing new. I just put in my earplugs and forgot about it. About 20 minutes later, I was woken up by my phone being called. It was my friend. Let's call her Kate. Kate lived a couple of apartments next to me. "Do you hear that?" she said, worried. I pulled out my other earplug and noticed how the turmoil from before had gotten much louder. Although it was actually hard to pinpoint exactly where the noise was coming from. "Yeah," I answered. "What do you think it is?" Kate believed that she had heard someone calling for help. "Should we call the police?" she asked me. I assured her that we of course should call the police if we heard cries for help. I guess Kate was afraid of the situation not being a real emergency and just wasting the police's time. We agreed to have Kate call the police and wait the situation out. I must have waited around 30 minutes while the cries got louder and louder. I now realize that it came from the apartment diagonally from mine, my upstairs neighbor's neighbor. A new young guy had recently moved into that apartment. I hadn't even met him yet, just saw him from a distance. He could be anybody, and this could be anything, I thought to myself. I now became alarmed. What if this guy was being beat up? He was yelling at the top of his lungs while furniture was being thrown around, resulting in bangs and booms. I pictured two men, one throwing furniture around, and the other one beating my new neighbor up. Perhaps he owed them money? I decided that I had waited long enough, and I called 112. That's 911 in Denmark. I got through to the operator, stated my name and address, and asked when the police were going to arrive. "We haven't received any calls regarding that address tonight," the operator stated. I later found out that Kate hadn't made the call to 112, but to 114, which is the non-emergency number for reporting break-ins and getting info on ongoing cases. I explained the situation to the operator, and she had a police car sent immediately. When I hung up, the yelling and noises from the apartment really began to predominate everything. Had I not known better, I would have thought that the noises came from my bathroom, because they were so extremely loud. Being a quiet girl who had never been in any danger or trouble, my body began to tremble with fear. My mind started racing with earth-shattering thoughts. What if they found out that I called the police? Will they hurt me? And the worst thought of all, will they hurt my dog? My beloved dog, who I, to this day, love more than life itself. Yes, seriously. Reason had completely gone out the window. Tears started to slide down my cheeks, and I was careful not to make a sound. I laid down in bed, just hugging my dog. For 40 minutes, I waited like this. The fear was gruesomely high and constant, as was the yells and the noises from the apartment. I finally caved, and I called the police again. This time my voice was shaking, and I no longer had the self-control to be polite. Being very professional, the operator assured me that 2 officers were already at the address. I remember feeling completely lost in this moment. How on earth could this yelling still be occurring if the police had already arrived? I got up and went over to my window to look up my neighbor's stairs. One officer looked to be in a kind of calm waiting position, in the middle of the stairs, looking up at her coworker handling the situation in the apartment. Both confused and relieved, I realized that the situation couldn't be near as dangerous as I had imagined, though I was still way too shook up to sleep, so I discreetly watched the situation unfold. A short time after, an ambulance arrived as well. The paramedics went in to retrieve the young guy, the resident. It took 2 paramedics to escort this guy down the stairs. He was still yelling uncontrollably, kicking and waving his arms all over. I later found out what had been beating him up for so long. Lysergic acid diethylamide, LSD for short. A few moments after, his friends around the same age calmly and unaffected followed the police officers down the stairs as well. They all drove off, and suddenly there was silence. Emotionally exhausted and relieved, I fell asleep shortly thereafter. The next day, the guy's mother came by to thank me for reacting in time. Even though I was never in any real danger, I only realized that after the ordeal. The fear and therefore the trauma was very real. For months, I would freeze at the slightest unexpected sound, and I was so afraid of walking my dog after dark that I obtained a pepper spray for protection, which is illegal to carry in Denmark. I guess drug use can affect more people than you realize. And take it from someone who has witnessed an LSD trip gone wrong, drugs are really not cool. At all. I'm out doing some nightly grocery shopping after work, since I take the bus and it's on the way to my apartment. So I like to get it done, so that I don't have to worry about doing this stuff during my days off. Anyways, I'm in Walmart, and I'm pretty small for a 20-year-old female. I'm 5 foot exactly, and I only weigh like 125 to 135 pounds. So, I'm basically the least intimidating person ever. Well, I noticed this man when I first enter, and he's handsome, tall, dressed rather nice for being just at Walmart. He stood out to say the least, and we made eye contact and I smiled, because I try not to be rude to anyone. Well, I'm walking around the store and I notice him in a couple of aisles that I've gone down, but this Walmart is relatively small, so my alarm bells weren't ringing just yet. But I did make a mental note of how many times we just happened to be in the same area. Around the fourth time, in the bread aisle, he pops up again, and I can see him staring at me before looking down at his phone, typing quickly, before then looking back up at me and the typing away furiously at his keyboard again. He's definitely giving me the skeevies now, and so I decide to leave the aisle quickly and dash between some clothing racks. As I'm trying to stay hidden, he emerges from the aisle looking around, and I think that he probably sees me peeking up from around the racks and starts heading in my direction. After about 10 minutes of me trying to quickly and quite frantically gather all of my groceries, he is still tailing me. Finally, having enough, I stopped abruptly, almost causing him to rear-end me with his basket. I take a deep breath and ask very loudly, "Do I know you?" And his eyes get very big, and he takes a step back, obviously surprised that I confronted him. He stammers out some words that I can't understand, and I say, "Why are you following me? Do I know you? What do you want?" At this point, my voice is slowly growing in volume and I'm causing a scene, and people are beginning to stare. Noticing the people watching us, he about faces and leaves without another word. I wander around about 5 more minutes, and then I finally call a lift to come and get me, because there's no way that I'm waiting or walking around at night after that incident. And as I'm waiting in the area where you grab your basket, I clearly see him next to one of the trees in the parking lot with 2 other men, just standing there and waiting. I don't know if they were waiting for me or for someone else, but when my lift got there, I put all the groceries in the car in one run because I didn't want to risk them seeing me and following the lift. I don't know. This was hella creepy to me, but I don't know if it belongs here or in Let's Not Meet, so if it does, just let me know. I got a bunch of other crazy stories about people being complete whack jobs. Just let me know if you want to hear them. This happened sometime in December. It was already dark outside and I was waiting for my boyfriend inside of a bank, where there weren't too many people standing. It was in this area that wasn't inside where all the people were, just the ATMs. I had just gotten off the phone with my boyfriend who was on his way when I noticed this guy standing at the far side of the little ATM area that I was waiting in. And he kept inching closer and pacing. He started to get an awkward distance that wasn't too close, but close enough for me to feel uncomfortable. So, after a minute, he walks up to me and says, "Excuse me, I think my life is in danger. Can you call the police?" Red flags were raising already because there's a security guard in the bank. Wouldn't he want to talk to the security guard then? Why did he wait so long and act so shady? So I backed up and shook my head. "What do you mean? I can get the security guard. Do you want me to get the security guard?" He shook his head and insisted that I call the police, so I asked him one more time. "Are you sure you want the police? How about an ambulance? Let me go talk to the security guard." And then he goes, No, I'm actually homeless. Can I just have $5 or $20? I told him I didn't carry any money, and to be honest, I'm a broke student. He backed off and left the bank. I called a friend on video chat to have someone with me and told them what happened. More people came into the bank, and that same guy came back and watched me. And I'm pretty sure he was inching closer again. Part of me thinks he was gonna snatch my phone the moment I took it out to call for help. I don't know. Thankfully, my boyfriend got there, and we left the bank. In general, I'm a very paranoid and conscious person. I live in a decent-sized town for college, and I was buying groceries alone one evening. I was 19 and female at the time. I was minding my own business and filling my cart when I realized this middle-aged man in a baseball cap was in the aisle with me, with no basket or cart. At the time, it was odd the way he was looking at items, but I thought maybe he was just coming for one or two things. Then I went through a few more aisles, and every time I went somewhere, he was also there, still with nothing in his hands. At this point, I was expecting the worst and getting creeped out by this dude. My first thought was if he was actually following me, and if I went to another random part of the store, would he also follow there? I decided to go to the complete opposite side of the store, to the most random aisle I could think of, kitchen accessories. I went there and didn't see him at first, while I was acting like I was looking at Tupperware. And then, sure enough, he was at the end of the aisle. I got really creeped out at this point and decided to go through a bunch of aisles in middle of the clothing section instead of the main center aisle to try to get away from him to check out. I went back to pick up another item of food that I forgot and seemed to lose him, and then proceeded to check out. I never saw him after that point, but I was still freaked out and asked an employee to escort me out, which they did. I was super paranoid in the parking lot, but again, never saw the man. To this day, I'm always on the lookout for anyone odd while shopping because that could have ended very differently. I used to be naively helpful to all sorts of strangers, and often picked up hitchhikers, solo and in groups, to get them where they needed to go. When I was 19, I had moved to Huntington, a college town in West Virginia, and I worked at a popular bar. My shifts would start around 9 p.m. and end about 2 a.m. I didn't know anybody in this town, or state, even, and I had been there on my own for only a month or two. On one of these nights, one of the customers had taken an interest in conversing with me while I was working my shift. Me, being a good employee, conversed pleasantly back. He was in his 30s or 40s, buzzed white hair, with a group of other guys, all of them tattooed and with leather jackets. Nothing against leather or tattoos, I have and wear both, but just giving visual details. He'd been there going back and forth between them at their table and me at the bar, pretty much talking to me non-stop for a couple of hours. Around 1:30 a.m., he mentions that he doesn't know where his friends went. I look up, oblivious, and see that the whole bar had virtually cleared out. He was right. Not one of his buddies was in sight. He says that they all must have gotten drunk and forgot about him, leaving him there. The man is clearly bummed and concerned because, as he tells me, he lives almost an hour away from here and now has no way of getting home. And it's the middle of winter, so it's snowing pretty hard. He spends the next few minutes on the phone calling the different friends that were at the bars with him, but no one's answering. He's clearly tanked. I can't leave him at the bar, and I can't in good conscience leave this man out in the snow. So, hell. Now I've got to drive this stranger home in a place that I'm unfamiliar with, in conditions that I've never really driven in before. There's no snow in my home state. I tell him to not worry, and that when I finish cleaning the bar up and closing up, I'll take him home. And I do. We get in the car, and he gives me directions as we go. We're talking casually, like we had been, just superficial conversation, nothing even hinting at sexual or flirty. I'm not a flirty person, so I'm positive there was no misunderstanding here. Keep in mind, it's like 2 in the morning. No one knows where I am, or that I'm with this rando and it's snowing heavily. As we're chatting, suddenly I feel his hand on the back of my neck. It was such an unpleasant feeling. I remember his fingers swirling into little hairs at the bottom of my hairline, which were too short to make it into the ponytail. Ugh. I scrunched my neck and just calmly said, "I have a knife," as I kept looking forward, driving. The swirling ceased, but the hand lingered on my skin, and again, calmly but firmly, I said, "I have a knife." He removed his hand, and we kept driving. I figure whatever that was is handled, and we get back to our conversation. Minutes later, I feel his hand fully against the back of my neck, his fingers wrapped gently around its curve. I scrunched my neck again and said, "Seriously, I have a knife, I have a knife." He removed his hand once more, and then in a very hurt tone, he said, "Are you really scared of me?" After that, he kept his hands to himself. It was a long 1-hour drive, but I got him home and I took off. I'm 29 now, and it wasn't until many years later that it occurred to me that this whole thing was probably a setup that he and his friends had planned. They probably left him stranded so that the chick he'd been talking to all night would have to take him home, opening the door for sex. Consensual, or maybe even not. Moral of the story: don't let people you don't know in your car. And also, carry a knife. This actually took place in 2016, before I transferred to a different line of work. As I say, I've seen it all working at a service desk, and to say the least, this encounter marks the creepiest I've ever had. This was around 2 weeks prior to Christmas, and one of the busiest times, though around 8 to 10 p.m., it slows to a crawl at my desk. Between managing the phones and returns, I was the one-woman army at the desk, and I called the service desk my service desk around this time. And customers knew it too. I was not flexible on many rules or policies. Now, around 9:30 p.m., we get some people who come in. I get the occasional return, a call for a cab for an elderly who has no cell phone, usual group at first, and then this one guy comes in. He was just odd. He was wearing what looked like an outfit from a disco movie. He walks up to the desk asking to use a courtesy phone, which we don't have one. We used to, but after some rather rude guy threw it, causing a hole in the wall, we took the courtesy phone away. I told him no and asked me if I had a cell phone that he could use. Nope, my cell phone's in my locker. He then asks for my phone number. I just stopped and stared, saying, "Huh?" And then I said, "I'm married." "No, you're not. You work here." He was laughing. "You want to get coffee after your shift?" I saw my CSM, that's customer service manager, walk up and tell him to leave me alone. I was relieved and did my returns to claims and food claims. By the time I got up there, my fiancé was coming in to pick up supplies for dinner and to borrow some cash for soda. Disco Man was talking to my CSM, which was blocking the guy. I was informed that I was needed in self-checkout, which I leapt for. Of course, Disco was following me, and again he asked for my number. By now, my fiancé and his friend, who is my ex-boyfriend, also a best friend to us both, were checking out. When Disco didn't get my number, he moved on to the girl nearest me, another coworker who was freaked out. Apparently this guy was moving down the line to all the so-called single females. I was given the walkie and I called LP, and I told them what was going on. As Disco went right back towards me, he was suddenly stopped by LP and an off-duty policeman. Finally, I was off and clocking out, and sure enough, my fiancé was told to wait by the electronics back door. LP was with him. We walked up front to see Disco yelling that I was a two-timing, and that he would fight my fiancé. Disco was in handcuffs and basically being led out of the LP office. I asked in the car what was going on, and my fiancé just said, "It's best not to know." He later told me in 2018 that Disco Man was wanted for sexual assault. And yes, Disco was creepy as hell. Who goes to Walmart to pick up chicks? This happened like a week or two ago to me and my family. We're fairly new to where we are currently living, so my dad decided to take us on a walk to a park that's near his workplace, which is in the city. We get there, pay for parking, and just walk about for a while. To get in and out of the park to the place we parked, we had to walk through a tunnel. Walking into the park through the tunnel was fine, but not so much when we wanted to head out. At the end of our walk, we were approaching the tunnel, and I saw a figure pacing back and forth in the entrance. When I got closer, I was slightly ahead of the rest of my family. The figure was completely dressed in black and nervously looking up and down at us. When we all got close enough, the person dropped down and started screaming stuff like, "I need blood. I'm coughing up blood." Or just, "Satan! Satan!" over and over again. Naturally, we GTFO of there, and we went into a museum-type thing near the tunnel to report what happened to a worker there. My dad described it as they were either having a psychotic breakdown or a really bad trip. We still don't know what happened or why they were acting like that, but it put me off for a long while. This story isn't super juicy or anything. I just thought I would share. Years ago, when I was a teenager, probably 15, I was staying at my aunt's house for a week during the summer to spend some time with my cousins, since we didn't live in the same town. I wasn't allowed to wear makeup until a few years later, but being at my cousin's house, which was less strict, I figured why not. My cousin, who was about 13, did my makeup and put some on herself. Nothing too fancy, just some eyeliner and mascara. That day we walked around the mall, just the two of us, feeling so grown up. After we were picked up, my aunt had taken us and my two other cousins, her brothers, to Walmart. We were all together, and they knew the Walmart pretty well, so we were allowed to just go walk around while she shopped. Not long after my aunt left, we noticed that these two guys were following us around the store. They were well into their 20s and had no business talking to us. We kept trying to walk through the clothing to get away from them, but we never could. They would just follow close behind and basically catcall us. It's beyond me why we didn't go and tell an employee, but we were just nervous, I guess. Eventually, my aunt came to get us to leave, and the guys just disappeared. I was walking around Wally World around 5 last night, looking for dinner when I came across him. I first noticed him because the only thing he had in his cart were 6 family-sized bag of Talkies. I paused for half a second near him because who the hell needs that many Talkies? And he then made eye contact with me. He was an older Hispanic-looking man with glasses. I see him out of the corner of my eye a few times while shopping after that, but that always happens at Walmart, right? I walked to the cat food aisle next, when I noticed him in the aisle next to mine, with his cart pushed out awkwardly to where I could see him, and I assume that he can see me. He just stands there and I'm feeling awkward because all I want are to get my cats some treats. "Do you need help?" He walked up to me and asked. I declined because I realized I had already made the mistake of looking at this man, and now he won't leave me alone. I went to the self-checkout partially because I knew a guy that worked in there, and if this weird man kept being weird, I knew I had someone close to tell. As I was scanning my items, the man walked by me again with his cart and waved at me very slowly. I assume he had just checked out. I took my time at the self-checkout after that because I'm a 95-pound woman who's paranoid about getting kidnapped. When I walked out to my car with my cart, there was an empty space next to the passenger side door, so that's where I parked my cart. As I'm putting my bags in the back seat, I hear a car and feel eyes on me, so I go to move the cart so whoever can park in the empty spot. As I do, I realize the car had that old man in it. He stopped and waved at me again before slowly driving off. I sat in my car for 15 minutes with the doors locked because I was afraid he was going to wait for me to leave so that he could follow me. I know that this seems paranoid, but the way he kept looking at me, the way he kept waving and would happen to find me again when this Walmart was so busy, I literally didn't see anyone else twice. He also didn't put anything else in his cart the whole time. Not a single thing from any of the aisles that I saw him in. And for a little extra context, this happened around 5 p.m. And where I live during this time of year, that's still broad daylight. I almost want to think that he had something mentally wrong with him because I think a predator would be smarter than that. I was vacuuming in my house at around 9:30 p.m. with my music playing when I get a knock on the door. My boyfriend was at work and I wasn't expecting company, especially so late. I turn my music down and realize the door is not freaking locked. Instantly, I'm terrified. I'm only 4'10", so I had to prop myself up the wall to look through the peephole and carefully locked the door. Then, more pounding. The man outside my door is no one that I recognize, and looks disgruntled, dirty, and quite frightening. He was short and stocky and just looked angry. He grew frustrated knowing that I just turned my music down, and he heard me lock the door and started calling out, "Ma'am?" More knocking. "Excuse me, ma'am." How the hell did he know I was a woman? I look around the room and see that my blinds were open, and realize he must have been watching me vacuum. Thankfully, my neighbors right across from me opened their door, and the husband asked, "Excuse me, who are you and what are you doing?" Startled, the creep fumbles and says, "Oh, good evening, sir. I was just going to offer my carpet cleaning services to her." The husband goes, "That's great. She doesn't want it. You need to leave right now." The creep then left promptly. Afterwards, I called the police, my boyfriend, and I closed up my blinds and texted the neighbor to thank them for scaring him away. I paid extra to live on the top floor, but it seems like the creep was just watching me from below. I go to Walmart around 7 a.m. Where I live, Walmarts are 24 hours, and I'm sure a lot of others are as well. It's not crowded, and I can get a spot right after the 4 handicapped spots. I park and get my reusable bags out of my back seat, and when I move to open my back door, there is a man sitting in this black Audi across the way from me, and he's staring at me. He has tinted windows, but I can still see him enough to know that he's looking at me. I was weirded out, but I didn't really let it get to me. Maybe he liked what he saw. Anyway, I'm in Walmart for about 45 to 60 minutes. When I come out, the man has moved his car. Not to the parking spot in front of my car, but the one next to the person in front of me. I quickly shove my bags in the car, shut the door, and put my cart back. I get in my car and lock the doors, and I'm hella freaked out. So, I take my phone out of my purse and start taking photos, trying to get a picture of the license plate. As soon as I started to do that, he threw his car in reverse and left. Fast. I don't know if it's coincidence or not, but it left me uneasy for the rest of the day. Alright, my beautiful friends, that was a collection of some creepy or creeper encounters, however you want to say it. I put creepy, and then I'm like, this would have been better for creeper encounters. But then people might think it had something to do with Minecraft, so I don't know. Anyways, this was a collection of creepy encounters, remade, my third, I checked this time, remade video. Old stories that were creepy. These came from episode 30, 31, 32, and 26 on this channel. For some reference, yesterday's video was episode 549, so it's been a minute since I've read these stories. They're pretty old. A lot of them are from 4 years ago. I requested these all back on, like, January whatever of 2020. Like, right after I started doing the channel work, so. Yeah. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed these classic scary stories redone. It's been a long day, sorry. This video took me way longer than I thought it would. These classic scary stories, if you did, please do hit that thumbs up button. If you're new to the channel and liked what you heard, of course, please do consider subscribing, as I do content way too much. I got a lot of content coming up that you'll probably enjoy, to be honest with you. Some past life stories, some glitch stories, some new stalker stories, a video that's going to be just strange and weird stories. That's going to be fun. And then some night drive stories, hopefully. We'll see. Yeah. You can also join memberships or Patreon and get early access to content like this, as long as it gets up early. Tonight's video is going to be late, because it's already 5 p.m. and I'm just now getting the recording done, which is so unlike me. It's been a day, like I said. What was I saying? Oh, yeah. Like, join, super thanks, just by doing the super thanks button, which is a tip to the channel. Always appreciated, never expected. And of course, all that said, friends, I hope you remember you are loved, you are valid, you are important, you're the best you that you can be. Do not forget it. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise, and do not let weirdos follow you in Walmart. and of course my friend. Much love, and sleep well.